Thank you. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our Cooperation Projects 2024 application workshop. My name is Katie Lowry, and I'm the head of the Creative Europe Desk Ireland Culture Office, and I'm here with my colleague, Leona Cully. We're going to take you through this call, looking at an overview, kind of the process itself, the budget form, and with plenty of time to answer any questions people might have. So this is what always happens the minute I start recording, it freezes, but let's go here. So this is our running order for today. So we're going to have an introduction and an overview of the call, at which point we're going to stop recording and have some questions. After that, we're going to go through the application process itself. And again, we will stop and have time for questions. And then finally, the favorite topic for everyone, which would be the budget and the budget form. And then again, we'll stop recording and have a roundtable discussion. So let's kick off now. So just briefly, what does the Culture Office do? So you're kind of experiencing it right now. We give information, advice, and assistance to Irish applicants to the Creative Europe program. We promote the program at local, national, and regional level. We collaborate with key sectoral stakeholders here and across Europe in order to expand our reach and better deliver our message. We work in collaboration with the Creative Europe Desk Network, facilitating partner search requests, and we increasingly work closely with our Creative Europe Desk media colleagues to promote cross-sectoral partnerships, events, and projects. So quickly, and again, this is always a really important point. I'm not gonna labor it too long, but really fundamentally, funding for culture, like all of the EU funding programs, is to achieve social and political aims. So in order to situate your work and kind of give yourself, I guess, the best chance of success under an EU funding program, it's worth taking the time to understand the broader policy framework that's, anchoring all these funding programs. So we see here, there's the new EU agenda for culture. This next one, the work plan for culture. So programs run for 7 years. This current one will run until 2027, and the current work plan we're working under runs from last year up until 2026. The next two, which I've bolded, these are the key pillars, the key policy pillars for the EU right now would be the gender equality strategy. And more broadly, this covers kind of access and inclusion as well, and the European Green Deal. And the last one there is the European Framework for Cultural Heritage. So this is kind of, it's not necessarily to kind of obviously read and know these kind of intimately, but all of them will have summary documents. Sorry, can everyone hear me now? Thumbs up, Leona, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry, yeah,
okay, sorry. So another thing, and I mentioned that document, is they set out a work program for a Creative Europe work program for each year. So I think you all probably received this in a email that I sent, but it's worth looking at this for 2024, because this is what the funding this year is responding to. So what has the EU identified as key challenges for the cultural sectors in 2024? So the big one is really kind of the ongoing legacy of COVID-19, specifically high inflation and high costs. Everyone has experienced this both in their personal and their working lives. The Commission will specifically reference here rising energy costs. The other challenge would be the war on Ukraine. So this, and you'll see this reflected when we get into the specific objectives and priorities of this call. So obviously the legacy of that war and the conflict that is ongoing. Again, we see, and you'll see this again and again, but this is a new novelty here where, you have making the cultural and creative sectors greener and more inclusive. And what is new here is the EU has actually set a target of 30% of their program budget. And I think that's across all of their funding programs are to be spent on climate. So you see, really, that's a core pillar here of their funding. Another one you see, and we'll see this reflected in the specific call priorities and objectives, would be, they're calling it Shaping Virtual Worlds. But essentially, this is the changing digital landscape as AI and many other new formats or tools come on board. So you kind of see here, this is kind of the overall challenges that the EU has identified for your sector. Sorry, it's just, and then this is kind of comes in. So how are they going to address this? So this is kind of culture at 2024 priorities. So this is across all of their funding for culture. So they're seeking to build a more crisis-resistant cultural and creative sector across Europe. They want to continue dealing with the consequence of war on Ukraine, and they want to encourage a greener and crucially, and you'll see this, and I'll go into this, you see a much, or it's not much, but it's definitely an increased emphasis on inclusion and specifically access inclusion. So you see here encouraging a greener and more inclusive program. So again, this is, sorry, just click that for a second. So here we have something that crosses, it's called a horizontal or cross-cutting priority. This will cross every EU fund that you apply for, whether it's under Erasmus, whether it's under Horizon Europe. You will see both the inclusion, diversity, and gender balance priority, and also the greening of Creative Europe. What we see here with this new program, and I know there's a number of people that might have applied before or, taken part in a project in an earlier round. We're starting to see, as I was saying, around kind of inclusion, we're seeing a greater focus, or certainly foregrounding of looking at what we would call arts and health. So you're seeing here the access is focused on people from disadvantaged backgrounds, disability or health problems, socioeconomic, social, geographical obstacles, etc., allowing for intercultural dialogue. So you see here, and this is where I think in some ways a lot of organizations working here in Ireland can be positioned quite strongly, because there is certainly, if you look at the Arts Council with its kind of equality, diversity and inclusion policy, national and local funders here in Ireland have been asking organizations to consider these communities or underrepresented groups for a long time. So we are kind of positioned well here as we see this gain kind of greater focus at EU level. And again, we have here the greening of Creative Europe. So I had linked to that, the European Green Deal. So this is really, we see here, it's getting strengthened by that kind of budgetary target of 30%. So let's look at the budget. So I'll go into this again, but one of the biggest, it's funny, the EU uses the term novelty, but one of the biggest changes this year is that there will be no large scale projects offered. So traditionally there's 3 strands of funding, and this time the budget will cover 2 strands. So we look at category 1, which is small scale, is 23.8 million, and the EU has said that this is the largest amount allocated for this particular strand to date under this program. So sorry, I should have said the overall budget is just under 60 million. This is just slightly less than last year. And then we see here probably the most popular strand, the medium strand, and this is the one that was overly competitive last year, and this is why the EU is trying to address it with getting rid of the large scale and putting that budget into the medium scale. So we see here a budget of 33.8 million for this strand, and in comparison it was only 21 million in 2023. So quickly here, we're looking at, so we have Creative Europe. We're talking about cooperation project strand, which is the largest amount of the budget. Their budget goes to this, typically around 70 or 80% of their annual budget. Sorry, I'm just going to So who can apply? So this funding is open, it is not open to individuals, it's open to organizations. You must have a legal entity. That could be an NGO, you could be a cultural institution, a museum, a small arts venue, or a cultural organization. You must be operating in one of the 40 participating program countries. In order to access this funding under cooperation projects, you have to have partners. So depending on the scale, in this case, you must have a minimum of 3 or 5 partners. There must be a coordinator. So one of the partners must take the administrative lead, and that coordinator must have been in legal existence for at least 2 years. And you must be able to demonstrate that you have sufficient financial and operational capacity to deliver a project. Just quickly, a few little things to kind of to talk about. So if you are looking at this strand and you're looking at it as a coordinator, you can only be a coordinator on one project in any one round, but you can be involved in multiple projects as partners. You cannot apply with the same project or under more than one strand, and these projects will last a maximum of 4 years. One thing to kind of say, and we'll go into this a bit more in the budgeting, is that this funding operates on the principle of pre-financing. So a lot of people, I know there's some programs a lot of people would have taken part in, could be some of the more kind of regional or structural funding like LEADER or Peace Plus. This is not a kind of vouched expense type project. This is once you sign your grant agreement, you will get 80% of your grant upon signature. And then the final balance is paid when your project is completed. So that's that. So let's quickly look at the timetable. So we're all working towards a deadline of the 23rd of January at 5 p.m. Brussels time. The evaluation. So this is the other thing. It's quite a long process. So they will begin evaluating in February right through till June. And you will hear in July, and they will anticipate that you will sign your grant agreement in October. So let's just look at the composition of this funding of cooperation projects. So for category 1, a small scale, so this would be kind of the entry level scale in a way. A lot of this would be people's, a lot of times, first experience of a cooperation project, and it's looking for a minimum of 3 partners from 3 different European countries. They offer a grant of up to 200,000, and that can be 80% of your total budget. So another novelty of this new program, which began in 2021, would be the EU has raised its co-funding threshold in order to enable kind of more micro or small, or as the EU would call them, grassroots organizations to take part in this funding. So if you apply for category 1, you will have to raise between yourself and your partners 20% of your total budget. And then we have category 2, the medium scale. So this will have a minimum of 5 partners from 5 European countries. So I should say this is a medium or a minimum. A lot of times people do have more partners than the minimum. And under the category 2, you can apply for a grant of €1 million, which can be 70% of your budget. So you can see why that would be a very attractive strand for people. So this, you're going to have to select objectives and then priorities for this funding. And this is, here you will only select one. So the 2 objectives which remain unchanged will be creation is the first one, to strengthen the transnational creation and circulation of European works and artists. So that's very straightforward. And the second one is innovation, to enhance the capacity of European cultural and creative sectors to nurture talents, to innovate, to prosper, and to encourage jobs and growth. Now, it's really important, I guess, to take a bit of time to talk about what the EU can mean by innovation, or when they're saying to innovate. Because I think in some ways, and you'll see this kind of often, is some of the language it doesn't necessarily seem suited to the arts and culture sectors, and it doesn't necessarily resonate with a lot of people, or they can't see themselves in that objective. But when they're talking about innovate, it can very much be about kind of innovating an artistic or creative methodology, like finding new ways. You might have found, I was at a presentation kind of just after COVID, and it was an art center in the UK, and they decided actually what they were going to do is they recognized what artists needed is they were going to essentially give them a salary and an office space, and they could kind of make work or not make work or develop work, or they had just created a whole new model for working with kind of artists on an ongoing basis that took them out of the, the production chain that can be so exhausting. So, that's an innovative model they were actually going around and presenting about and probably trying to scale and grow. So, it can be just about, it can just be about a new way of working. And it doesn't have to necessarily have that crossover with an industry or a supply chain or, anything like that, though it can. So it's, that's just kind of an interesting one. So I think the first one is quite straightforward, but the second one is kind of interesting. And there's probably more scope for artistic activity there than people might see on first look. So let's look into the priorities here, and there have been some changes here. So where a priority has changed, I've highlighted it in red. So with cooperation projects, they're saying do not select more than 2. So you could actually do a whole project, certainly a small scale with 1, but they're saying definitely don't select more than 2. And this is where, sorry, I just admit, this is where it's worth taking some time to really think, which ones am I going to speak to here? Because once you select one, that's the entire lens through which your project will be assessed and scored. So really kind of put some time into thinking which is the 1 or 2 that I'm going to tick and I'm going to speak to. So the first one here is audience. So again, you'll see access reflected here. So it's to increase access to engagement and participation in culture, and in particular content from this is so hard to read, from other than their own for all types of audience. So basically what this means is if you are a small venue based in Roscommon and you are bringing over an artist or a piece of work from a different country that audience wouldn't normally have access to. So I think it used to be called kind of non-national. Basically, you're exposing a national audience to non-national European work. That is what the EU wants. There's a huge value in that to them. And again, with audience, it's really, this is kind of a qualitative lens. So they're kind of saying, if you can demonstrate that you're reaching a group that might be, kind of socially excluded or marginalized in some way, or wouldn't normally have access to this type of work, there's a huge value there. So it's not a numbers game. It's about kind of that qualitative lens of access. Here we have social inclusion, and again, this has been changed slightly. This is the kind of, I guess, the kind of when we're talking about kind of the social aims of the EU, social inclusion is actually incredibly important, to them for a lot of reasons. So we're looking at this priority to promote societal resilience, and this is new, including the important role of culture for health and well-being, particularly mental health, and to enhance social inclusion through culture, in particular for people with disabilities. Again, that is very much spelling it out, people belonging to minorities and people belonging to socially marginalized groups. And then, oh, sorry. I probably didn't mean to go there. So those are 2, and we would definitely see those 2 coming through kind of strongly when we look at applications from Ireland to date. Sorry, let me just move here. So here we have sustainability. This one hasn't changed. So to some extent, your project in terms of I guess your working practices, you'll have to be addressing sustainability in some way anyway. I mean, we certainly have to do that as our work as the desk, but this is for projects that have that at the core in terms of its kind of artistic or cultural activities and delivery of the project. So then we have digital. So again, this has changed slightly in the wording, and this is to help the cultural and creative sectors undertake or accelerate the digital transition, formerly called the digital shift, and to embrace the opportunities and to address the challenges raised by artificial intelligence and other emerging technologies. So again, this one is slightly changed from last year. Again, this is really interesting, and we'll probably, some of the discussion will come up later around involving activities or countries or organizations or artists from outside of the eligible countries. And you can see here, there is a priority very much on international dimension. So one thing the EU at a recent, or the Commission at a recent training event would have said, there's no barrier on your project having activities in any country or any place. It's more about the benefit has to be seen to kind of be coming to the European or the eligible kind of artists and organizations, but international dimension, looking at the role of culture in improving international relations, which is linked back to some of those kind of treaty or policy documents I mentioned. So we see here the international dimension is to build the capacity within the European cultural and creative sectors. And this is important, including grassroots organizations and micro-organizations, to be active across borders in Europe and beyond. And this can really feed into kind of the overall idea of building the capacity of artists to have kind of long-term sustainable careers. Certainly in a lot of cultural sectors, having that kind of international, I guess, exposure and reach is really important and feeds into that overall aim of having a sustainable long-term career. So you can see here, that's an interesting priority. And then this has changed. The annual priority, as it's called to date, this has been focused on specific sectors, which changed every year. This year, it's specifically for supporting the Ukrainian cultural and creative sectors. So let's see. So just quickly here, we're going to look at, and this is kind of a general, I guess, kind of comment, whatever, whatever funding you're applying for, is look at the award criteria and look at how your application will be scored and judged, and really kind of have that beside you as you're putting together your application. You'll see here when you go into, I'm not sure if many of you have opened it up or looked, but the Part B, the application form, you'll see it's really structured around this, and they're asking specific prompts. And those prompts will be what your evaluator is going to also be looking to see how you've responded and scoring you. So we have relevance, quality of content and activities, project management, and dissemination. So here you can score a maximum 100 points. The threshold for funding is set at a minimum of 70. And more than 50% of the max score under each category. However, I know of a number of projects here that scored well into the 80s and hadn't met the funding threshold. So what they do is they start from, the top scoring, and they kind of go down until they've spent their budget. So you really need to be aiming for kind of that A+ if you think you're going to be, in with a chance of being funded. So we look here, and again, all of this is in the call, so I don't necessarily have to go into a huge amount of detail. And again, you'll see this kind of prompted through the application form itself. So relevance is your project relevant to the objectives and the priorities of the call? And again, the priorities you have selected. Is it based on a sound and adequate needs analysis? Have you looked at what, I guess, is an issue that needs to be addressed for your particular sector across Europe, and you come up with a rationale for this project based on that? does your project address the cross-cutting issues of inclusion, gender equality, and reduction of environmental impact? And does your project have European added value? So this is really important. So European added value is this: your project could not be achieved. It could not be achieved at solely national level. Do you know, it can't be 4 countries that essentially are siloed, and they're each delivering activities in their country. There has to be that kind of constant interdependency and exchange between the European countries and partners involved. So here, and again, this is probably needs to be updated. So you'll see this is some feedback that's been shared with us over the years. And again, I think I can probably sum this up in terms of, I guess, lack of detail. So that often comes up. So that would be kind of a general comment where you have a very good kind of aim. You say that you have a rationale or a methodology, but you haven't explained it. You haven't explained how you've gotten there. You haven't linked it back to maybe some earlier work that you've done, or, you know, it's just, there really just isn't a lot of detail here. Again, if what we always say is, you know, sometimes, you know, you might know the artist you want to work with because it's going to be an open call, but like, explain your rationale for that. If you know who you're going to work with, you know, include that detail. Again, what can come here, it's really important to kind of have, I guess, everything proportionate to the scale of your project. If you're doing a small scale project, a small scale 2-year project, and you are yourself, you know, in a network of kind of grassroots or small organizations, I guess your aims can be like proportionate to that. So don't be kind of over promising, you know, kind of look at what you can be expected to do for the level of funding and the kind of size of your organization. Again, this is kind of really interesting because even if it's to a limited extent, you want to be able to demonstrate that your project is looking kind of at a wider sector and it's seeking to kind of benefit a wider sector. So you can see here that that's been really recognized. So I would say as a rule, under the quality of content and activity, I mean, the first 2 are, I would feel, Irish organizations tend to score quite high. You know, what I've seen over the past number of years is there really is an increasing alignment between kind of national funding and policy and EU policy. So, you know, organizations are, I guess, well positioned to answer a lot of the things, or kind of be thinking about things in the way the EU wants you to. But if we look at quality of content and activities, the proposed methodologies are appropriate for achieving the project's objective. The project involves an appropriate mix of participating organizations in terms of profile and expertise, and ensures an active contribution of all of them. So often what you'll see here is you don't necessarily have 3 or 4 of the same type of organizations. You have an organization. So if your project would involve any sort of kind of research, that a lot of times people will involve a third level. We had a project not too long ago, and it involved designing a game. So one of the partners was actually a game designer. So you're kind of looking at that mix there. If you say that you're going to, you've identified a certain constituency or group that you want to work with, you know, you'll have to be able to demonstrate how they'll actually benefit from that. And again, looking at the project design makes sense, and the timeline and the schedule and the budget, everything kind of makes sense together. Here again, just a few kind of some feedback, and you can see again that it really comes down to a lack of detail. So if you say that you are going to do something, it has to be evidenced in some way. So it's not a huge amount of information, but you have to be clear on how you've gotten how you've developed the rationale and how you will kind of undertake it. So you see here, and again, I'll make all these slides available after. So this is really important. And again, we'll get into it, and many of you know, but essentially the way that this funding works now is there will be no kind of financial based reporting or any of that. It's based on deliverables. So you could see here, project management is going to be so key for kind of monitoring, evaluating, and delivering on these projects in the way that you need to do now. So project management should include effective mechanisms for coordination between the participating organizations, propose an appropriate governance structure, and I should say here that while the project will have an administrative lead, it is a equal creative project, or a partnership, I should say. So you really need to show that everyone is involved to some extent. And when we go into the work packages, you'll see how each partner will take responsibility for what, but you really want to kind of show that even if the lead partner is obviously going to take on the administration of the project, that other people are involved and have some form of kind of oversight or contribution to make, that your project involves the appropriate project team, staff, and outside resources. So that's quite straightforward. Again, this is where they're going to look at your budget, and that, what I say to anyone making any kind of application is that the budget has to be read, with the narrative and vice versa, so that your budget allocates appropriate resources to each activity, so that there's appropriate budget for proper implementation, best value for money, that the measures planned to ensure project implementation are high quality, basically that you have kind of very good governance attached. So the other thing that, we'll just move into kind of talking about, I guess, the quality of the partnership is really the last thing, I guess, that the EU wants to see is that, and it's a terrible metaphor, I'm going to use it anyway, that this is a kind of marriage of convenience. They want to kind of show that these are people that you have communicated with or collaborated with or might want to work with, into the future, that you haven't just come together for the funding. They will look under this at, I guess, the geographic spread. So, sometimes it's obviously because of our location, it's not such an issue here, but they're not looking at, just neighboring countries coming together. They want a bit of a mix there. Looking clearly at the roles each partner will fulfill and their, I guess, capacity to deliver that, both kind of organizationally and financially. And looking at, I guess, the future of the partnership after the funding. So not in a way of, and it's a lot of stuff that kind of happens naturally anyway with these partnerships, that you kind of stay in touch, that you kind of, you collaborate in some way after the project is over. So dissemination, this can be one where people tend to kind of lose some points because they forget. So really, we're looking at EU funding as a hearts and mind exercise. This is like a kind of a PR exercise for the EU on a very large level. So you're looking at the communication and dissemination really clearly, like how are these project activities going to be visible? So that's really here. So I kind of, I'm not sure I'll read through everything because I'm conscious of time. But here we can see the feedback. The other thing is really, sometimes this is one, if we're looking at kind of communication and dissemination, because it's a massive process or project to get your application together, to get, you're kind of getting all the partners kind of agreed. There's lots of back and forth. And sometimes this can kind of come at the end, this last piece, but really spend a bit of time thinking about this category. And don't forget to, I guess, allocate a budget for it, because, you want to kind of show if you have, and again, have your aims under this one, be proportionate to kind of your size and your capacity to deliver, so it's not like we're going to reach 5 million people. That isn't what they're talking about, especially when you look at, specific targets around access for specific groups. You can demonstrate that really clearly in this category by possibly the relationships you've made with kind of key stakeholders within those communities, and thinking, okay, we're being really targeted and we're going to reach these groups and we're going to reach it in this way. So let me see. So just quickly, the cross-cutting priorities, to date, some of the feedback has been, it's not, they haven't been terribly well developed. I think over the past couple of years, the forum itself, and you'll see as well, and if I have time, I'll go into it, within the kind of online form, there's a lot more specific prompts around, certainly around the inclusion, diversity, and gender. But you really need to show that you've been thinking about these, from the kind of design and implementation. So really, it can also focus on how you as the partners plan your work. And just again, you're going to be, and what's really frustrating about this whole process, and I do recognize that, is sometimes it feels like you're being asked the same question in all these different places and over again. Just make sure that you're kind of paying attention to your answers in different parts of the application. So I'm going to stop sharing, and just a second, I'm going to stop recording. Pause. Okay, this is my favorite part, the application process itself. So let's go. So one thing that many of you have noticed is with this new funding framework, the 7-year funding framework we're in now, there's a new funding and tenders portal. So you'll see kind of across all EU funding programs, the same portal is used to make applications, and the same files, or the same forms and formats. So a lot of things are the same. Here are just some things to highlight that are different. So obviously the deadlines of all the different fundings are different. The duration of how long these projects can last are different. The funding schedule, or the dates of selection, start dates can be different, maximum grants, percentages of co-financing, all of payment schedules, eligibility criteria obviously is different, and all of that kind of award sub-criteria. So limits of financial support to third parties, annexes. So it's really important that you use the specific call document. So the forms might be the same, the templates, just make sure that you're always kind of going back to the relevant call document. So I spoke at the beginning, a lot of those early slides when we were looking at kind of annual priorities and all of that are found within the annual work program. And this is where you'll get a sense of, I guess, the political and kind of policy and social aims for this year. So it's worth kind of having, but your Bible for this is really the call document, which you should all have. So this is going to set out, it's your guidelines basically for the call. So that's a really important document to have. The other thing is the online manual. And again, I'm not sure if I've sent the link already, but we can send this, but this is really important. So you're going to need this, because this is kind of, you will come up against like certain kind of technical questions, and these will be answered there. Again, questions on how to go about like preparing your application in a kind of process sense. This will be found in the online manual. The other thing that's kind of annoying about the new structure is in previous programs that I was across, they would have one kind of giant document and it would have, you know, everything in it. What happens here is there will be some I guess kind of financial information in particular. So information around what is an eligible cost, the payment schedule, all of that will be found in what they're calling it's the model grant agreement, the MAGA, I think, or something. And then there's an AGA, but basically you'll have the call document and the model grant agreement, and you know, together that's going to give you the full picture. And then obviously the online manual when you run into kind of technical problems. The other thing, and I'm going to attempt, so you'll see the shame of my inbox there, sorry. The other thing I'm going to attempt to do in a minute is go into the portal itself, because I've started a kind of dummy application and I'll show you that. But this is kind of the home page when you open the funding and tenders portal. And you'll see I have highlighted here support, and there's a number, oh, I've kind of messed that up, sorry. There's a number of there's videos there, there's guides, the online manual, FAQs. So that's a really important one to kind of bookmark as well, because you'll get a lot of information there. So where to start? So I'm not sure where everyone is at, but this is something you need to be doing now. Like after this meeting, if you haven't, you'll need to get you need to register on the funding and tenders portal. There is a webinar. I'm hoping that link is still working if you haven't done this before. So have a look at that, because the commission will take you through it. So all partners involved, whether you are the lead coordinator or a partner, you will need what's called a PIC code. So it's a personal identification code. And you'll need to upload, and this is where, you know, around kind of legal, you know, entity and everything, you will need to upload certain information. So you need to be doing that now. And if you are, you know, if you have a number of partners that you're kind of coordinating as the lead, they need to be doing that now. So what I might do now is I might just see if I can share the portal itself and show you how to find the call, because again, it's kind of confusing. So, okay, this is new territory, guys. I'm sharing the live internet. Will it work? Can everyone see that? Or Leona, I guess you might be able to say that you can see.
Yeah.
Great.
Yeah.
This is, you'll see, this is the home screen of the funding and tenders portal. I hope you have all seen it. If you haven't, we'll share the link. So you see here, search funding and tenders. So every single call is there. So you could see here, there's just a number of calls that have come in. It's, you know, there could be 20 calls open at any one time. So we're going to try to find our call. So I'm just going to hope that comes up with that. And you can see here we have European Cooperation Project Small. So once you go in there, you have a certain bit of information about your call. You'll see that it's open. You'll see if you scroll down, they have limited information here. If you actually want, which I've sent to you, but if you want to download the application form and the budget form, you actually have to start a submission. But on this main page, you'll find a certain amount of information around the call document, the objectives, eligible countries, which is really helpful. But you'll see here the start submission. So this is where we're going to start. Now, I'm not going to do this here because I'm going to go into one I've already started. But this is the one, again, what on earth do all these acronyms mean? But you're going to select this and you're going to start your submission. This is really important. And this, they've promised this will be updated. We'll see here a topic related FAQ. So if you are running into some form of difficulty, this is your first port of call. You will find that other people have same. So one of the first things that came up, and we'll go through this, is there has been a flag in terms of file size for the application form for this call. But if you open the application form, it's still saying the old one because it doesn't apply to every single EU funding. So you can see someone has flagged that, like this is your kind of first, I think there's about 18, but this will be added to. So that's really your kind of first point of call is you find your call, you go in. Now, the great thing about this is you can start, you can kind of start a submission today to kind of go in and get, oh, sorry, someone's come in, you know, to go in and get a feel for it, and it's going to save as you go on, you know, so you don't need to, you have time to kind of work on it, to look through it. So I think that's really helpful. So that's something you could do today if you have, if you already have, you know, if you're registered already, go in and start to kind of play around and have a look at the forms. Let me just go back and see where I am in the presentation and what I need to do. Okay, so let's just talk quickly about the different roles for applications. So all of the applicants are actually called beneficiaries. So we have coordinators and partners. Affiliated entity, it's not so much probably the case for many of you here, and it can be kind of confusing, but essentially an affiliated entity is linked to a beneficiary with similar rights and obligations, but do not sign the grant and do not become beneficiaries themselves. So this can happen where you exist certain times, like very large organizations set up kind of smaller entities within them. So if you had, like, say, you know, a large tech or design company, they might actually have kind of an arm that is more of a social enterprise or delivers kind of social or artistic projects, and they might set them up separately. So then the larger tech company would be the affiliated entity. We don't need to get involved in that. Here we have what's called associated partners. So these are organizations which participate in the action, but they don't get grant money directly. They bear their own costs. So this could be an organization from a non-eligible country. So this could be, you might have a long-standing partner in the UK, and they might be working in a really relevant way, and they might be delivering amazing activities, and they want to be involved, and they want to stay linked within Europe. And they can do that, and certainly there's scope there, but they can't be paid out of the EU grant. So they would presumably source funding nationally to take part in this international project. So they would be deemed an associated partner. It doesn't have to be a country that, or, you know, it can be an EU country. So they want to be involved. They mightn't, another example of an associated partner is they mightn't have, you know, they might want to kind of be involved in a lesser extent, and they can do that again, but they can't be paid out of the EU grant. But you want to kind of maybe show their value to the project by being involved, but they can't benefit directly from the grant. Subcontractors, again, this is really something to tread with care. So subcontractors are people that are delivering tasks or actions that cannot be implemented by the beneficiary, and they're paid for it. So this is really, you really want to avoid anyone delivering something that could be delivered by the partners themselves. So really they're trying to avoid people kind of getting an EU grant and then subcontracting it out. Third parties, basically, these are people that can give in-kind contributions and bear their own costs. So again, this is really, a lot of this language is around probably the post-Brexit and the UK leaving. So those are just some definitions to look out for. For the application itself, and you would have seen these, and I'll go into the portal again. There's a couple of things you'll have to do. So a lot of this application, as you've seen, it's entirely online. Part A and Part C are kind of, it's an embedded form online that you're filling out. So it's filled out directly online. And then Part B is what is essentially the application form. So this is your technical project description. You need to download that document, complete it offline, and then re-upload it at the end as an annex. So a big change, and people are not happy about this at all. But it's what we've been given is the new document. So the Part B document is limited to 50 pages. So what the Commission or the EU has said to us is after 50 pages, they will gray out all the text and it will not be available for the assessors. So you really have to be, so the EU would have said that they get a lot of, you know, kind of information they don't need. They're like, you should be able to, you know, show us your idea, show us your methodology in 50 pages. So I guess the only thing is everyone has the same, you know, the same rule. So it's democratic in that sense, but that is a change. So Part C, and we might go into that as well, is this is quite interesting. It's additional project data, and this feeds into them, I guess, it will feed into their kind of monitoring and evaluation. So they're trying to be able to kind of, they want at the end of this program, because what I've seen over kind of 2 iterations is it's always a real fight to get that kind of culture budget from the Parliament. So what they want is to have as much information as possible to be able to demonstrate the kind of impact on EU citizens of this funding. So you'll see a lot of data related to what specific groups you're working with, you know, where you're based. What's interesting is this section also contains some, you know, kind of projected data around reach or scale that when you come to reporting will be updated with actual data. So if we look at the annexes that you will have, in addition to Part B, you're going to have a detailed budget table, which we'll go into. And you will also have to include a list of projects. So the template for this, there is a template. It's actually found within Part B. So you kind of copy that out and you're going to upload it separately. Just to say around previous projects, this does not have to be European projects. This can be national projects. But the thing here is selecting projects that either, I would say, obviously the first, that they reinforce they're demonstrating your capacity to deliver, your track record in delivering the types of activities that you're applying for. But also, I would say selecting projects that you can show really align with those kind of European policy objectives that are, you know, they might be a national project, but they're kind of very clearly aligned to the European objectives for this call and those kind of overall, especially the horizontal priorities. So the other thing that's new for 2024, and it's very confusing because again, it's a shared template, there is a space to upload additional annex, you know, when you go in, but for this call, it's just no additional annexes, no CVs will be considered. It's just what's here. So I'm not sure if we need to go into the application form Part A and share again, but really this is kind of where, I guess the one thing I'm going to say here, and you're going to experience, is across Part A, across Part B, and across Part C, it's going to seem like you're asked similar things. And you really just need to do those double checks that you're having, you know, the same information. So the thing here to spend a bit of time, so obviously you are selecting your priorities, which we went through. So 1 to 2, no more than 2. And here we have our project description. So it's a short project description. Spend some time on this. And this one can be funny because you kind of put it in and it's going to follow you forever, because it's going to be the one that's kind of pulled out, you know, when your project is kind of, you've come through the grant agreement and it's up on the portal as a live project. spend some time, because this is your kind of short description, and then you kind of go you go through and you're listing all the participants, and then you're filling in the budget. Now, I would say with the budget, you complete this after the work packages and budget table have been completed. So here we have part B, and as I said at the beginning, it's structured around basically how your project will be assessed. So we have relevance, quality of content of activities, project management, dissemination, and work packages. One thing is, I mean, I guess I'm conscious of time, so I'm not going to go into part B if anyone has gone in and has specific questions. But the one thing the EU did say to us at a training is they have spent time putting in the specific prompts and questions within each of these parts of the application form. So please just spend your time kind of looking at those and responding to those directly. Again, it's important to kind of be realistic here, again, as I've said, and proportionate to what you're trying to achieve and what you have the capacity to achieve. It is proportionate. If you have a small scale 18-month project that really is structured as a kind of maybe a testing phase or developing a methodology, you know, your impact and your ambitions are relevant to that. So just keep that in mind at all times. So we'll go now into the work packages, because this is a change. I guess it's the third or even fourth year of this. So this probably, if you are not working, if you don't currently structure your project this way, it can be a challenge. But ultimately, if kind of done, I guess, correctly, or done spending the time on it now, this will become like a roadmap for when you hopefully get your funding and can start your project. So eligible costs and activities. So your project is structured, your narrative project description, and then your budget, everything is structured and broken down across defined work packages. So there's three that are kind of you have to have them. So obviously management and administration, implementation, and there can be a number maybe that you choose under that, and communication and dissemination. So the thing, and we'll kind of say it again, is really after your application and after you're successful, your budget will not be considered. Your budget will not be considered at all by the EU, you know, once that's come through. So this is what they're going to be looking at. You know, this is what they're kind of auditing in a sense and monitoring. So what they would say is the work package structure allows for greater emphasis on defined deliverables, outcomes, and results. So broadly speaking, if you deliver, you know, so I guess what I'm trying to say is, you know, putting the time in now and being realistic and thoughtful now, because this will follow you for the 4 years. So you can do your budget, and you absolutely, there's challenges there because it's a lump sum, which we'll go into based on real costs. But this is the structure that's going to follow you. And this is the structure in which you'll be, I guess, checked on. So one thing I would say, and this is from, you know, learned the hard way, as they say, really keep your work packages to a minimum. Like you ideally would be seeing 4 to 5. Keep your deliverables and outcomes and results realistic. Do not overpromise, because you'll have to be like, that will just create so much more work for yourself. And if you do that, you know, reporting is going to be simpler, and also budgeting at application. So here there's some confusion where it says lump sums calculated per work package and balance paid only when work package is complete. Again, you have to remember that 80% of your grant is actually paid when you sign the agreement. So really any of that kind of cash flowing, you know, so to speak, is kind of at the very end of your project. But So once you say something is estimated to be completed, at that point, you will have to put up a deliverable. So give yourself enough time as well in terms of when you're saying activities end, so that you have time for the reporting. I'm just trying. Oh. So the first thing you need to do, you've kind of gone and you've hopefully registered on the portal. All your partners are registered or in the process of registering. You need to start to kind of define the skeleton or the scaffolding of your project. So you need to define your work packages. So the first thing you'll see is that each work package needs to have a partner responsible for it, or, you know, however you break it down. But the coordinator must be responsible for work package 1, which is project management and administration. So you're going to start to think about looking at all your activities and costs, you know, across the whole project and the partnership, and starting to group them under work package. And then you're going to start to define your outcomes and deliverables for each of those work packages. So let's look at the first one. So this is a default one. Everyone has to have work package 1, and it's led by the coordinator. Here are some examples of work package 1. So you would have planning and preparation, meetings, evaluation, quality control, coordination activities, preparation of final reports. And here's some examples of what a deliverable would be. So you would have agenda or minutes of meeting, evaluation reports, quality control reports, planning reports. So really, this is one where, as a Creative Europe desk, the first year we did this, I mean, we had way too many under. Be realistic, because everything you say in your application becomes a deliverable. It's written into your grant agreement. So just be, you know, just be kind of cognizant of what you're promising here. So artistic activities. So this would come under implementation. And again, try to group these into, like I've seen some, and they might have like 7 or 8 that are kind of coming under artistic activities or implementation. Really try to avoid that if you can. So here's an example of artistic activities, so coming under that implementation umbrella. So activities would be rehearsal, preparation, co-creation, concerts. It's really that kind of platforming or exhibition. And here you're just kind of evidencing all of these. So you're having a schedule, planning of rehearsals. You'll have kind of links to the work. If you've kind of produced anything, it might be an app or a publication, you know, this is all coming in there. So really you're kind of looking at proof of the artistic activity. This is an interesting one, which a lot of projects are working towards, would be capacity building. Again, you can call this whatever you want. This is what we have as a guide. So these could be residencies, mentoring, training courses, classes. And again, you're evidencing all of this. So you're having kind of maybe the schedule or agendas. You might have post-event feedback or evaluation. You're going to have any kind of travel documents. So if it's artists traveling to a residence, you kind of save their travel document. You have basically, you're kind of evidencing it. So this came up earlier around conferences, networking, and knowledge sharing. So again, I hope it's pretty evident here. And again, with the deliverables, you're kind of proving something happened. So you really need to build that into your planning, that there will be probably having the work package structure. You're going to have to really think about that kind of ongoing monitoring and evaluation piece, and how you will deliver that in terms of capacity. So if you don't have the time, you know, within the partnership itself or within the organizations involved, is this something you budget for outside of that? You know, do you need someone to take, you know, responsibility for that? Because that is a big piece of work. You know, you will need to have that kind of ongoing monitoring, evaluation, and feedback in order to be able to kind of show your deliverables. So here we have communication and dissemination. So again, this is pretty straightforward. I feel like Leona Cully is going to give a webinar on this because she's actually amazing at this, but really this is kind of, as you're kind of programming events, you need to be kind of sure that you're keeping an ongoing record. So you're kind of having, you probably have that anyway, but that you've developed a communication or plan or strategy for the project. Projects, a lot of times it's not necessarily necessary. Some larger organizations might use an existing website, but a lot of projects build a website or some form of online web platform, a publication, a brochure. I think that's pretty self-evident. So I might just pause recording and we'll see if they're okay. So let's just, we're nearing the end here. Let me just take you through our budget. So here we go. And again, many of you are hopefully familiar with the new lump sum budgeting for cooperation projects, but we're going to go through it again anyway. So this is really adjusting to a new way of thinking from the EU. So really, they really want to do away with any kind of financial reporting or auditing on their part. So this is about your grant is linked to results or deliver. So if you say, or if you deliver what you said in the grant agreement that you sign, you will be paid. That said, it obviously has to be based on actual costs. So what is meant by a lump sum? So it's not like some of the other maybe Erasmus funding that's based on a flat rate where they determine how many people hours are on a project and then calculate your grant. Lump sum is meant that you essentially take an average of costs and you give it a lump sum. So in our budget, which is probably out of date already, we were looking at hotels for travel. And obviously, you know, different countries, different counties, and we just determined for us, we're going to have a flat rate of 150 euro for hotels. And that's our kind of hotel rate across, or with staff time. So we'll go into that. You're just kind of, you're having just in consultation with all your partners, depending on the role within the project, you're giving a flat rate. Now, the challenge is that these costs will have to kind of essentially be future-proofed. You have to kind of look and think this could be taking us up to 2028, but those are the principles of the lump sum. So after the application, your budget is not considered. So you do need to spend the time. So you're not going to be able to go back and say, I have a revised budget now. This is your chance. This is where you put your thinking and your time into your budget. So obviously, we'll go through the budget form, but you'll need to have detailed planning and budgetary planning before the application. You need to be organizing your activities and deliverables into work packages within your budget. And you need to, your budget is broken down per organization and per work package. So let's look quickly. I'll open up the form in a minute. Let's look at what are eligible costs within your application. So again, this hasn't really changed. The three main costs, so are A, direct staff costs, B, subcontracting, again, something you want to use very sparingly, and C, purchase costs. And what's meant by purchase costs would be the main one, obviously, because of the nature of these projects, is travel, accommodation, and subsistence. You can also purchase equipment. There's a specific depreciation sheet you'll need to fill in for that, and other goods and services. So this would be, obviously a big one is artist fees and any kind of production costs for your project. Then you have financial support to third parties, and you have indirect costs. So this is a really interesting, so this would be the eligible, non-eligibles, as I used to call. So this is the flat flat calculation of 7%, and this would relate to, you know, kind of rent, overhead, any of those kind of running costs. So there's a few helpful links here to help you in your calculations. And again, when you see certain unit costs for travel, personnel, or accommodation, you're really looking at kind of maximums. So it's just intended as a guide. But we'll circulate these. We'll circulate these after. So again, just a quick note before I open up the form itself. This is a budget based on actual costs. You'll be asked to represent costs as a single unit. They do specify this time that if you're talking about personnel or staff costs, they want one unit to be 1 month. I know there was a problem with the form last year, which has been fixed. I know, and this might come up as a question, this doesn't work for everyone. That's not how they kind of engage people or budget. You can use a 1-day unit, but you'll need to note it. So I'll show you in the form, there's a section where you have essentially a case where they're telling you to use a 1 month, but you're using a day. You need to kind of note that as you go through in a notes form in the budget form. For travel, again, 1 unit needs to be equal to 1 journey, and so on. And again, with any subcontracting used, you just need to make sure you have a clear justification, value for money, and if it's over a certain, I mean, they say to kind of use your national guidelines, but if it's over a certain kind of threshold, that you've followed kind of the kind of procurement and tendering. Okay, this is, and I'm going to show you the form in a minute. It is an absolute beast. It contains so many formulas, so much information, and you really, really need to be careful here because it's just quite temperamental. So it's a mandatory annex. They do not want you using your own. So while you will very likely, and you should have your own Excel budget that you're using for yourself and the partners, this is a mandatory annex and you have to use it. You will need to use Excel 2010 or newer. It's only currently working on Windows. Unfortunately, Euro is the only currency, so that can be obviously that can be, you just have to look out for that, and kind of provision for if there is a non-Euro currency being used. So you need to download the sheet and you need to save it as a XLSM document. And then when you're uploading it, it needs to be an XLXX or an XLS. So that's really important, and just kind of keep that in mind. There's a lot of stuff that's automatically calculated. So what you need to fill in is the beneficiaries list, and I'll show you that, and the work packages list. So you'll see that. And then once that's done, it's going to create a budget sheet for each work package. And I'll just show you that now. Let me see if I can share that. Okay. Hopefully this is working. I'm going to open the other one.
Yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. So you see here, the first tab is an instructions. This is really handy. It's going to kind of tell you how to go about things, but it also has a couple of things you need to fill in before you get started. So you're kind of seeing if you come down, oh, sorry, I've already filled it in. The first thing that it's going to ask you to do is insert the name of your call. So this is say co-op, whatever. And the acronym of your project. Now, if your project has a short name to begin with, like I know Clodagh's here, but they had a project called Read On, Clodagh Whelan from West Cork. Fantastic example because it's nice and short. But some projects have incredibly long names, and you're asked to give it an acronym. So I'm just going to call this test. Maximum grant as stipulated in your call. So this is a small scale. So I've written 200,000 maximum co-financing rate, and I've written 80%. And then you'll see here, and this is again to be discussed with your partners, but they ask you to designate kind of employee type. So again, this can be, you'll see, so I'm just kind of saying project manager, administrator, maybe producer, whatever you want to say. So you've kind of done sheet 1. And then if you go over, you'll see beneficiary. So beneficiary 1 is already in there. And you just put your name. I'm going to say, and then you find your country here. Oh, no. This is thrilling viewing for everyone, I can tell. I didn't actually need to make it. I'm going to make it Hungary. And then it's really important, anytime you do anything on here, you have to double click apply changes. So I have the wrong sheet open. So let me open another one. But basically, once you apply changes, it will save. So I obviously haven't saved this correctly. So I'm going to open the other one and show you. Okay. Okay. Anyway, I'm probably wasting time, so let me just, and then you'll see here, you're going to do the same thing with the work package. You're going to kind of add, so the first one is administration and project management. You're going to double click apply changes, and then you're going to go so forth, and you're going to list down all of your, see if that will work or not. I had about 4 versions before I started this morning. Let's see. You're kind of getting the idea. So let me move into, let's see. I think we have to do this first. Yes. Okay. So you see I've double clicked. And it's just making its way. Sorry, this is taking a long time. Okay. Now, so there, I'm going to just stop because I notice it's 1 and I think there might be, let me just finish up the presentation. So you kind of see here, I've done a screenshot and you see there's the 3 beneficiaries. And then I have all of the work packages. And then this is what your, so once you create a beneficiary, it's going to create a budget for that beneficiary. and you're going to see the work packages there. Sorry, I've gone. This budget, then you'll see it's called the consolidated. Then you see it will pull everyone's budget into one. So all you need to fill in is the kind of individual beneficiary budgets. So just the final kind of thoughts, I think, or things to work on. And obviously, if you are working on a application, you know, biggest thing is to kind of keep in touch so that if something needs to be resolved, we can. That's really leaving enough time, because I can go to the Creative Europe Desk Network with the Commission. You know, we have the teams, we can post questions, but you really we often wouldn't get a response for a day, or, you know, you're not getting immediate responses to things sometimes. So leave enough time within your application itself. Just make sure you're including enough detail, not necessarily a ton of text, but that if you're kind of saying something, it's evidenced. Continually be relating your project back to the award criteria at all times. Develop a clear and detailed communication strategy. Be working on that kind of from now, maybe identifying within the partnership who might be kind of best positioned to deliver on that. I mean, I would say if you're a lead partner, you're looking at everything that needs to be done, and you're kind of delegating amongst the partnership and kind of having people feed back in. Obviously changing your focus to kind of outcomes and deliverables, and keeping your budget in line with your aspirations. So I'm going to stop sharing and stop recording and see if there's any